Good morning, everybody. I'm actually making this video on Father's Day. And so if you're a dad and you're watching this today, I hope you had a fantastic day. As a counselor, I can tell you that if I do a lot of groups with men, and I can tell you that if I ever really want to have an interesting discussion, all I got to do is bring up the impact that the dad had on them when they were a child. And honestly, generally most issues that I run across in dealing with people in counseling, if you really want to get back to some of the biggest contributing factors, oftentimes it goes back to the dad. And I don't say that like critically or anything because, we do the best we can, right? And we're endeavoring to be the best dad that we can be, but never underestimate the impact that a father has on a child, because it's monumental. Not to minimize the mom's role, but I'm just saying that the father plays a huge role in a child's development. And so anyway, but happy Father's Day. And so we've been in this series called Hope for the Troubled Mind. And we've looked at some mental health issues like depression and anxiety and bipolar and dealing with stress. And today I want to kind of go a little bit of a different route. I want to talk about an issue that is pretty prevalent. I would say that most people have some tinge of this regardless of who they are, and that is codependency. And codependency is not dependency. It's not being dependent upon someone. That's a totally different issue. Codependency actually is not even a billable disorder. As a counselor, if I wanted to bill an insurance company for something, there's a code that I have to put in order to get paid. And every mental health disorder, no matter what it might be, general anxiety, bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, whatever it might be, every one of these disorders has a code. But codependency does not have a code because of the broad scope and nature of this issue. And basically, it's a combination of a lot of things, and it manifests itself in a lot of ways. And the reason why I'm including it in this particular series on Hope for the Troubled Mind is because codependency does create a lot of turmoil in our mind at times. A lot of times we describe codependency as thinking with your heart rather than your head. And so a lot of times, rationally we know what's going on, but we tend to let our emotions overrule our rationality, and then we allow that to take control. So for example, if you're codependent and someone does something to you that was not your fault, okay, you will probably lay awake at night trying to figure out how to fix the problem. When you're not the one with the problem, they're the ones with the problem. That's codependency. That's one area of codependency. And it's just like we got to figure out, how can I fix this? How can I rebuild the bridge? And here's something. If you're a Christian, okay, Christianity, and I am a Christian, obviously, but Christianity really feeds codependency to a certain extent. I hate to use the word feed. Christianity becomes a rationale for keeping codependency moving forward. So, for example, if somebody does do something to me and I realize that, they're the problem, I'm not the problem, but if I'm codependent, I got to fix that, man. Codependent people are fixers. And so I got to fix this problem. Somehow or another, I got to make this right with these people. And so, and we can always use Christianity as the rationale. Jesus said, love your enemies. You know, we should build the bridge. We should be the first one to make the move. And all of that's true to a certain extent. But, you know, there are times when we need to let people have their problems without it being our problem. You know, their problems become something that keeps us up at night, that causes us to have stress and tension and anxiety. And when that takes place, when it's not even our issue, it's their issue, then that becomes a problem. And I remember one time I was pastoring our first church in Reeds, Missouri, and it was a small church, but we had no shortage of problems. Okay, we had some people in there. It was one of those family-run situations, and some of them were really great people, and some of them really weren't. And I remember we was going through something, man. I mean, we were going through something. I won't go into all the details, but I can just tell you that there was a lot of talk being said about me and my wife, and things were happening, and people were trying to stab us in the back, and we were basically starving to death on this little pittance of a salary that we got. And I remember going to bed one night, and I was laying in the bed, and we went to bed like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I remember laying in the bed so eat up with anxiety and tension from what was going on with these people. And this sounds crazy, but I probably stared at one spot in the ceiling for about 5 hours, and it went by like that. I mean, it just seemed I was so consumed with what was going on. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, my wife was sleeping beside me, and I heard her snoring. And her snore at that point in her life sounded like a TV that's off channel. She would go, she's going to kill me for telling you this probably. And anyway, I remember laying there, and all of a sudden, and she'd probably been snoring for a long time, but I was so consumed. And I remember all of a sudden I became aware of her snoring, and I looked over, and she just looked so peaceful. She just had her head on her pillow, and she was just in la la land. And I reached over and grabbed her by the shoulder, and I shook her. And she said, "What? What?" And I said, "How can you sleep? How can you sleep knowing these people are saying these things and treating us like this? And you know, how can you sleep?" And she looked at me through her little sleepy eyes, and she said, "Well, they're sleeping." So true. So true. We oftentimes allow ourselves to be just eat up with things when the people who are causing it are sleeping soundly. And see, and so where does codependency come from? It comes from usually, there's a number of things, but it's really rooted in kind of low self-esteem and guilt. Okay, low self-esteem mainly. Okay, because guilt feeds it. But like if you grew up and you seem like you never could, please your parent, or you felt like you never lived up to anybody's expectations. Okay. Then you're likely got a lot of codependent traits. If you had an addiction in your past, like myself, okay, and you likely have a lot of codependent traits. Why? Because you have a lot of guilt and shame associated with your past behavior. And so that again brings low self-esteem and insecurity to a certain extent. And so, there's that part of you that wants to be thought of as well, because you know that there was a good period of time maybe when people didn't think of you as well. There's that part of you that also needs to be needed to have that sense of self-worth and value that you're lacking, or that you haven't found as of yet. And and there's that part of you that wants everything to be right. Codependency manifests itself in so many ways. A part of it has to do with us constantly wanting to control people. We want people to do the right thing. And when they don't do the right thing, it just drives us crazy. We want people to be fixed. And so if we got people in our life who have problems, We are trying to figure out how can we fix those problems. You know, we want to be seen as a good person. So when people come and ask us to do things, even though we don't have the time to do it, our plate is full, we will still say yes. And oftentimes a lot of codependent people will let a lot of people down because they will say yes, knowing full well that they don't have time to fulfill the obligation that they're committing themselves to. We will extend ourselves way beyond what we should financially because we want to help people. And so like people come to you and want to borrow money and you loan it to them knowing you don't have the money to loan to them simply because you want to be a good person. And again, you think to yourself, well, God would want me to do this, you know? And so then we put ourselves in these positions, right? Which creates anxiety. Because when you know that you've committed to doing something and you know you can't be there, that is going to create a lot of anxiety, and it kind of cycles back because when you're not able to fulfill that obligation, right, then you're perpetuating the idea that people are not going to feel good about you. And so again, we just got more and more of this. It's like piling more on. Codependency, and I don't know if I'm going to do a session on this or not. I don't think I will. But codependency is like a personality disorder. There's a difference between a mental health disorder and a personality disorder. A mental health disorder can usually be addressed pharmacologically in some way, you know, through some sort of pharmaceutical medicine, bipolar, anxiety, depression. These are things that, there are pills that will help you with that. And I'm not saying that's the only answer. I'm just saying that there is interventions in that way. But if you have a personality disorder, there's really not too many pills that's going to fix you. It's a part of who you are. It's like the color of your eyes. It's probably not going to change. You're going to have to address it. And one of the things you do with codependency, one of the biggest things that you can do in addressing these various areas of codependency, whether it's loaning money or saying yes when you don't, or trying to fix problems that really aren't your problem, or any of these things, people pleasing, etc. The greatest thing you can do is to establish strong boundaries. Establish strong boundaries. Boundaries are like rules, internal rules that we formulate for ourselves to address issues that are problematic. And so one thing you can do is take your journal. Here's a great place for your journal. Take your journal and go and think in these terms. Okay, now that I understand what codependency is, right? How can I address this? I'm sorry, let me back up. Take your journal. Now that I understand what codependency is, how has this affected me negatively in my life? Think in terms of financial, relationally, okay, on your job, whatever it might be. How many ways has this manifested itself and caused me a problem? List as many as you can, and then you look at it, you look at that list and you start seeing, wow, man, this is really an issue that needs to be addressed. I mean, this has caused me a lot of issues in my life. And then ask yourself, if I had an internal rule or a boundary that I established for these issues that I'm struggling with, what would it be? So I'll give you an example. I don't loan people money. I used to loan people money, but here's the thing. When you loan somebody money, you must care about them or you wouldn't loan them the money, right? I mean, you're not going to loan money to somebody you don't know, probably. And so you probably have some sort of a relationship with them. And so if you loan them money, there's a good chance, because this is the way life is, that people are not going to pay you back. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If I have a relationship with somebody and I loan them money and they're not able to pay me back, even though I might be a very forgiving and non-caring person about it, what are they going to do? They're going to withdraw from me because they know they owe me money. They don't want to see me, so they'll avoid me. Maybe they'll make excuses. They'll have to lie and say things that they wish they hadn't said. It makes them feel bad. There's a wedge now in our relationship simply because I tried to help them, right? And so the last thing I want to do is, if I have a relationship with somebody, is drive a wedge in it. And so you say, well, man, you must be a real tightwad if you're not willing to help somebody out. No, and again, here's that Christianity thing that comes in again, right? I mean, somebody asks, well, I know I should give. The Bible says give. It does, absolutely. It doesn't say to let your family go hungry in order for you to help somebody else, though. It doesn't say that, okay? And so here's my rule. I don't loan people money. I give them money. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, could you loan me $100? I need to pay my electric bill. If I've got the money, I'll just give it to them, and because here's the deal. This does not require any obligation on their part. Our relationship is going to stay intact. Talking about Christianity, God's going to bless me because I am giving freely out of my heart, right? And so I'm going to be blessed from the Lord, and they're not going to have any problems with me because they don't have to pay me back anything. And you say, well, okay, if you do that, aren't they just going to keep coming back asking for more money? Generally not. But the next time they come, if you see that happening, you can just look at them and say, I care about you, or I wouldn't have gave you the money before, but I really don't have it to give today. But I will pray for you, and I love you. And guess what? Your relationship is still going to be intact. And the second thing is that likely they're not going to come back and ask you again once you've turned them down. And so you've saved the relationship. You've still been a blessing. You've done your part, okay? And God is pleased with that. But it all comes from establishing a boundary, a rule. Somebody said something like this one time, I remember. Think of your life like a piece of property, okay? Like a piece of property, right? Okay, if you don't put up any kind of boundary on your property, guess what? Everything is going to just come off onto your property and graze, and just, they're just going to just, you have no recourse on how to keep things out that you don't want. If you put up a big wall, okay, then you isolate yourself and you're all alone. You don't have any kind of interaction. What you want to do is build fences. You want to be a fence builder so that you can control what comes in and what goes out. And so I'm running out of time. We could do a whole series on this one issue, and maybe I will one day. But we could talk about codependency for many, many hours because there's such a broad scope. You say, well, how can I get some information about it? You can always get on the internet, obviously. But probably the best book ever written on codependency is by a lady by the name of Melody Beattie. And I think it's Beattie, if I'm not mistaken. Melody Beattie. The name of the book is Codependent No More. Now, she obviously wrote one or two more after that because that's the way publishing is. But generally, I always like to read the first book somebody writes because generally that's the book that's in them, and everything else is them trying to produce something. And so, but you can look up that book, and like I say, you'll read through some of that, and you'll think, well, that's not me. But then you keep reading and you'll find out, wow, that is me. Here's something that is me. The scope is very broad. So you may not manifest every example of codependency, but there will be some there that you will. And so think about some of these things. Take your journal. Ask yourself, what kind of boundaries do I need to establish for my life so that I can live in more of a peaceful mind situation, and the people around me are not taking advantage of me, and I'm not overextending myself and letting them down, and I'm still being the person that God created me to be. I know you can do this, and hopefully you'll give this some thought. So I'm going to let you go. Once again, happy Father's Day to you guys. It'll be belated because this comes out on Tuesday. But I hope you guys had a great day, and keep being a great dad every day and a great granddad every day, because you are making an impact in somebody's life. God bless you. I'll see you next time.